All right, Web 19. I promised you that yesterday was the worst. And hopefully, by the way, if you're feeling pretty confident right now, good on you. But I'm assuming most of you are kind of like, oh man, I just ran a marathon yesterday mentally. And we're going to get there. We're going to keep pushing. So much so that I really just want to review yesterday after the fact. So this is a very light day compared to yesterday, like almost too light. So if I come over to pens, I'm going to go look at our prototypes and make sure this is added to our collection in Web 19. So you can reference it really quickly. Forgot about that. I'm going to copy and paste it over here to our today's stuff. Okay. Get the console out. There we go. So in this case, let's review. So after you've like banged your head against the wall, these things are going to make a lot more sense. Here we go. So I'm telling you, there is value in the tears. Okay, I'm not like there's value in that sweat and tears and blood that you put into JavaScript, and these things start to reveal themselves. Okay, so in this case, we have a const. Like, let's start from day one. A const is a variable, right? It's a variable declaration to be specific. And the reason we use const is because we don't want our reference to be overwritten. In this case, we're using const here because we can. We want to use const anytime we can to prevent ourselves, like, as developers, from making mistakes. Here's the thing. You can write fully fleshed out apps with var, 100%. And in fact, when you start using tools like Babel, if you haven't seen it yet, Babel.js transpiles code down. So it takes new syntax and turns it into old syntax for cross-browser compatibility. For example, let me write out a arrow function for you. So const, and notice I'm using const, by the way. Const, arrow example, assign the value of, and then if I want to write out an arrow function, I have no parameters. I bust open my parentheses here, use my arrow symbol, open and close my curlies, and I could throw in like console log, right? I can even get rid of my curlies if I want, but we'll keep it there. So on the left, we've got newer syntax, right? And in fact, let's just get it ridiculous. So in this case, this is our super slimmed down, sexy, everybody likes it arrow syntax. And then you look on the right and look at this. Look at this. This is actually really awesome to see. Notice that var is used, arrow example, assign the value of function, and it's not even an anonymous function. They rename it to be arrow example, so it's totally cross-browser on older browsers. Like, that's a pretty crazy mind-blowing experience right there to see that even anonymous functions are not happening here. And then they're using the return keyword instead of the implicit one, and then they're console logging. Isn't that crazy? That's pretty crazy. So I just want to show you, when you see this is actually like what would work on more browsers. And so Babel uses this. You can install this right in VS Code, by the way, and run this stuff. I'm not going to suggest that right now. You'll get into it when you start using React, like literally the first week. But this stuff is why we need to know both. We need to know var because it's actually used. So here's the thing. If you might have this moment where you're like, then why the crap am I even using const? The answer to that, my friends, is yourself. As a developer, you can't trust yourself. And so const is like a way to help you stay inside the lines. Because if you were a robot and you always knew you were always right, like Babel, then you could use var because you would never have mutations, you would never have side effects. Const and let are really for humans. And so var is totally fine as long as you use it correctly. And the thing is, if we use const and let in the correct way, it'll automatically work in var. So I just want to talk about that and point it out to you that var is not evil, okay? A lot of people think it is. It's not. It's used for transplanting all the time. All right, that's a little side note, but I think it's worth talking about because I don't want you to get caught up in the syntax and think, man, this stuff is like, I have to do it this certain way in var. And like, I remember Moses, I think, was yelling at everybody, so I'll always use var till I die. And I'm like, Moses, don't. You don't need to. You can use Babel and it turns it into vars for you, dog. Okay. That's a little side note. So in this case, we have Fred. It's assigned the value of. So remember, we're using the assignment operator. We're not saying equals to. A lot of novice developers come from like algebra and stuff, and they're like, equals to, right? Math. We always say that in elementary schools and up. But we should be understanding this is an assignment. So I want you in your mind to say, const Fred, assign the value of new parent. That's way more accurate. So in this case, new is what? What is new? When you see that new keyword, what goes through your mind? Okay, a new instance of. I like that, Matt. A new object, constructor function, a new object. Good. Okay, Eric says what I was looking for, though. It's a new binding. Remember, the new keyword is directly associated with the binding of the this keyword when we're using constructor functions and classes, as you'll see. But I want you to understand that now. So great job, Eric. Everybody else, you're right. But specifically, it's a this keyword binding. Okay, we get into parent. It's capital P. Why? Why is it capital P? It's a constructor, but like why? Yes, the next developer, Dakota. Yes. Yep, Amanda, that's right. Heuristic. It is. It's more convention. It's just, does it matter? Does it have to be capital P? Absolutely not. But it lets the next developer know, hey, I'm building objects here. Like it's just a nice little indicator. You'll see it all over the place. Okay, so at this point, I could delete the object, and we could kind of just look at the kind of the original line of code we wrote here. So what we're doing here is we're saying const Fred, new parent, and then we're passing something into our constructor, right? We could pass in like one thing like, yo, and that, it wouldn't be very helpful, but it would make a new object, and we could pass in yo as an attribute. So the reason we're passing in a full object literal is why. Why are we passing in a full object literal here? What value do we gain? Yeah, we can pass in multiple attributes, exactly. And we have name parameters. Like all these things we gain from having an object literal. And it's basically the convention, right? Like just the fact that we don't have to worry about one-offs. Like we know what's coming in, the way we order it. Sorry, the way we've set it up. Now, is this set up in JavaScript object notation currently? JSON, if you will. Okay, let's go look at JSON. We keep kind of talking about it. The JSON object contains methods for parsing JavaScript object notation and converting values to JSON. So this is an actual object inside of MDN here. So this isn't going to really help us. So this is actually a parsing tool. Let's just look up JSON in general. Yes, when you see these kinds of pages, you know this has been around a while. So JavaScript object notation, it's a lightweight data interchange. Wow, that sounds cool. Quick, get me the data interchange. It is easy for humans to read and write. It is easy for machines to parse and generate. It is based on a subset of JavaScript programming language. Notice it says it's based on a subset. So other languages can use JSON. These properties make JSON an ideal data interchange language. JSON is built on two structures. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. So if we look at this, we can see we've got an object. Here's the name value pairs, right? It just goes through every single one of these pieces. But one of the big telltale signs of a JSON object is having the string value on the left here. And so with a string value, that means we can pass in special characters like spaces, for example. And spaces are awful to work with if you don't know they're there. So we could go back to, let's stay inside of our project here. And we could go back and actually turn these more into proper JSON right there by having the key inside of quotes. Okay, but in this case, if I'm controlling my data, I don't really need to do it. But if you're ever passing data to somebody else, you'll be the next developer's best friend if you give them a JSON object that's properly formatted. Okay, so hopefully, like, man, this is crazy detail with just, what, a couple lines of code here. This is crazy how much went into this line of code. Okay, like Fred signed the value of new parent. I just wanted to like show you how much you've learned from Monday. Then we went into yesterday and we had our minds exploded a little bit with the constructor function. So let's go talk about the explosion. So what happened is, I think everybody was feeling real good. Parents came in and we did this kind of thing where we said, well, what are the attributes? So we did console log attributes, right? That was something that we did. Let's go see what happens here. So we learned that because we had 4 new instantiations, which means new creations. It's a fancy word for creating something. So we have, in this case, new parent, and then we had a new child, which we'll get to in a second. But you can see we've got 3 objects. Notice these objects are not named, right? Because they're new objects, right? So this was the original Fred that we made. But in this case, it has the values of Fred. But as far as its name, it's just an object. It's just sitting out there. We can use it and identify it by using its moniker with its name. So you might be going over here and going, wait a second, how can we say pebbles.play? Well, that's because we have a reference to the new object, right? Let me repeat that. We have a reference to the new object because of the assignment operator. There it is again. That's how important that little assignment operator is. So this assignment operator is saying Fred is assigned the value of new parent. Well, what is new parent? Well, it gives us back a new smart object, right? So we created a dum-dum thing over here, and then we ran it through a smart machine. That's what we're looking at now. So constructors are smart machines. They make dumb objects smart. So in this case, we're receiving objects back in the assignment. That's why we can say pebbles dot, right? That's why we can say Fred dot. It's a reference. All right. So in this case, we can see the attributes that are coming in. So by the way, are these attributes the old object or the new object? What are they? Oh man, we got ourselves a 50-50 split here. So because we're inside of our parent, and all we've done is logged the attributes, but they came in through a new. So guess what? They're new. Because of the new keyword, right? So they're bound and they're created into a new object. But you can understand where the confusion comes from, right? So let's get into this keyword. So if we look at what this is where it gets really interesting. Pun intended, I guess. So I can say this. And now we get a huge object back, which has the methods on it, right? Because we assign these with prototype, and we'll come back to that in a second. But notice that we're missing something. Our new objects don't have age, name, location, and phrase. They're missing. So we've got to bring them in one by one. So let's just do it one by one. In fact, I'm going to comment these lines out. I'm going to get rid of this so we don't have any issues. Just so we can kind of stare. at the new object. So I'm going to hit run. And to ignore the child object, let's just look at the parent objects here. So you can see here, this new age assigned the value of attributes.age. So this was the value that came in from Fred right there, 35. And then what did we do? We stored it and created a new object piece from it. And that's why it says new age here. Now, by the way, the normal convention for this is this.age. But in the past, when I've taught it, people were so confused when I said this.age assigned the value of attributes.age. It was like, it doesn't make sense. And so that's why I named it new age. So you can understand that it is actually a new object. It's a new portion of the object. It's almost as if we set up a constant here. And we said const new age assign the value of attributes.age. That's kind of what we're doing here, except it's bound to this keyword, so that means that the object gains all of the abilities to come in here and say this dot and this dot down here. So it's almost like it's equivalent here, except that this keyword's brought in. So it's all about the this binding. That's why constructor functions and the this keyword are taught in the same day, because they're like linked. Okay, so now if I bring in these last three and we look at the new objects, now that we've brought in all the new objects, let's go see what they look like. Okay, new age, new location, new name, new phrase. These are new fancy objects. I want to be very clear that the difference between, let's do this. Let's do attributes and the this keyword separately, so you can see both of them. And I'll put a little string in here that's like, now you should be able to see it. Let's see what it looks like. So attributes were the old attributes. I could even come in here and write old if you really wanted, but hopefully you can see the difference. Age, location, name, and then look at what this keyword looks like now. So it's the next console, right? Looky here, new age, new location, new name, new phrase. This is where I know a lot of you are confused. That's why I'm hitting it so hard. But I'm hopefully like light bulbs are going off and you're going, oh, the attributes that I received were this. The new object I created is this. Okay. All right, let me look if there's any questions. What are the benefits of using JSON notation? Special characters. Like being able to use, instead of age, like first name, like that with a space. Like that's why. Or a dash. That's really like the biggest reason. And of course, uniformity across different code bases. That's, I think, the biggest one. Fred references only the new object or both? That's a really good observation. It only references the new object, right? Because the assignment operator is pointing to the new keyword. Very good question here. And the answer is it's only the new object. Carlos, who can't remind me what I can't even talk. You can't rewind me. Not yet. How would you delete a class reference? I tried implementing an actual destroy function, but could not unset the instance of the hero or villain classes. Delete a class reference. So remember, class references are not something you would delete. It would be the actual object itself that you would delete. Because remember, it's a constructor, right? So you would have to reference the object itself to delete it. So you'd have to like find the hero object to delete it, not the class. When do we use underscore name, naming convention? That is really up to the big boss. So a lot of people use underscore as a way to tell you their global variables, or if you work at another company, it means something totally different. So that's a total big boss question. Okay. All right, so at this juncture, I'm hoping that you see the old values coming in as attributes, the new object we're creating from the this keyword, and you can see that they look exactly the same. But if I were to draw a line, this might be the big light bulb moment here. Let's see. If I were to draw a line from Fred, it's pointing to this one. So that's the one Fred's pointing to. Wilma is pointing to this one. How do I know? Because of the new word that we used to signify that a new object was made. So these pieces of information came from here, right? Well, that line shouldn't have gone there. That should have gone to Wilma. So Wilma goes here, and Fred goes here. So let me get rid of this one. There we go. Hey, no, I can do that. It's dope. So in this case, you can now see that the old data came in here. Old. And the new object is here, right? Okay, I'm hoping you see that. If not, watch the video later. So in this case, console log attributes this, totally different, but they work together to create new objects. Like this is different than this, right? This is old, this is new. All right. Now, let's talk about prototype. Actually, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll talk about prototype. Because I feel like we need this to just like set. So 5 minutes. Ready, break. Okay, break time is over. Let's deep dive back in. Man, can't talk or spell. It's a bad combo. So with prototype, why do we put the prototype outside the constructor? Why do we not keep it inside the constructor? That's right. Memory and the usage, browser, and how much it costs. So if we put it on the prototype, it's stored one place, one time, forever. Just like we saw in MDN when we looked at, well, anything, but array is always fun to look at because it's got so many methods. So if we go look at MDN, it's kind of fun to see with our new knowledge that prototype keyword has a lot more meaning now, right? It's like, oh, wow. So that means all of these arrays, if we were to rewrite arrays constructor, we would have a bunch of this stuff. It'd be like array.prototype.forEach, and then they would have the for each function here. And then we do this, array.prototype for map. Array.blah, blah, 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 filter. I mean, this is quite literally like we could rebuild array from scratch doing this. Like it's that literal. So in this case, of course, you'd have to have all the inner workings here, but this is how they're built. This is how constructor functions can build objects over and over. And so you can see how it's on prototype, right? So if we took that same mentality, you'll see a couple methods that don't have .prototype in them. Where are those methods housed? There's no .prototype. Where are they housed in the constructor? In the constructor. I guess I said it. So if we come over here, we were to pretend we did .from, right? So .from would look like this. This .from, assign the value of function, and then, from code here. Crazy, right? Like you are looking at the underbelly of JavaScript right now, of how constructors build objects. So in this case, if we were to recreate array, like if we turn this into array and started like rebuilding it, we could. We have the technology. So in this case, with parent, we've got new aim, new age, all this stuff. Like we're just building out something that is more familiar to us as humans. Like that's why I chose parent. But this is how other objects are made. Okay? So why would array have some things in the constructor and some things out here in prototype? Well, the answer is these are going to be used more often and they're kind of baked in. So from, by the way, is a new ES next thing. And what it does is it creates an array out of something that's not an array. So there are array-like things that you'll be discussing with Dan next week. An array.from could be useful there. But everything else is like, you're not using map every freaking time you use an array, right? So that's why we don't need to have it ready at that level. So we can reference the method. It's stored one place in memory for all arrays for all time. That's powerful. That's truly powerful. So it's like, map's always there, but you don't have to use it until only on one array or 5 arrays or no arrays, right? So that's the beauty of prototype, is it stores it for later. So now that we've got that mentality, let's go look at prototype again. So with prototype, I think this is the walkthrough. I don't want to mess with this one right here. That's basically like all the stuff we're talking about rehashed. Let's see. Inheritance and prototype chain is more accurate. Okay. So each object has a private property which holds a link to another object called its prototype. That prototype object has a prototype of its own, and so on, right? Because we saw that chain. So we can actually see the chain. We can see the chain between objects with Dunder Proto. So prototype is the individual thing. I think we got lost yesterday here. So if we were to go over here and take it slow, if we were to go look at array, console.dir, so if we were to open up what array looks like, we could see the prototype is holding all of the methods, right? There they are again. So fill, filter, join, map, reduce, filter, it's all there, right? No questions there. It's like, okay, yes. And we know they're there because of the documentation. Prototype, 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 right? It's pretty cool. Like, it's one-to-one right there. No magic. So where things, I think, got a little magical was like this thing right here. It's like, wait a second, Dunder Proto, what the freak? What a weird thing. And this is something we don't actively manipulate. Like, developers used to actively manipulate Dunder Proto in their JavaScript. And now you shouldn't do that anymore. You should use object.create or something else. So in this case, Dunder Proto is an inheritance chain back to something else that it came from. Why do we even need to come from anything? Well, that's how JavaScript prototype inheritance works. Everything comes from an object. Okay. So if we open up our Dunder Proto here, and we open up this Dunder Proto here, you can see we eventually get back to our object. There it is. So I want you to think of Dunder Proto, _proto, as the link back to its heritage. Okay, so that being understood, I think this is kind of cool and everything, but let's go see how it works with our code. So if I come back here and get rid of all my silly array stuff, that was really, fun pseudocode. But if I were to take all this stuff and make sure it runs, so let's make sure everything's looking good here. Pebbles.play, hit run, hopefully it works. Yep. So I'm going to grab all this code, and I'm going to put it inside of the console again. Okay? I'm going to paste it in. But before I hit enter, I'm going to get rid of this line. Okay? Okay, now I'm going to hit this line, hit enter. So if I were to look at Pebbles, console.dir as an object here, you can see that Pebbles is a child, right? Makes sense because we said Pebbles is a new child. If we open up Pebbles, we can see that Pebbles has all the name property values. But there's something missing from Pebbles. She does not have the ability at this point to access the methods of parent. Because why? Look what the Dunder Proto is pointing at. It's pointing at object, which is just object. It doesn't have the abilities. It has play, which is her own object, right? Her own method. But it doesn't have access to speak or location. I hope the light bulb is going off right now because Pebbles doesn't even have that ability yet. Okay, now what am I going to do? I'm going to bring my code back in, and I'm going to just set up this one line right here. So we'll grab everything, go to a new page so we don't have a caching issue. Come over here, paste. And this time, I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to recreate the prototype, basically point my Dunder Proto to parent. Okay, going to hit enter. Console.dir. Pebbles. Open it up. And look at that. We are now pointing, we're inheriting from the proper class. And by that inheritance, guess what? Pebbles can now get location or speak, right? Pebbles is from Bedrock or speak. Pebbles says mama. If I go back here and try to do that in my original, I say pebbles.speak. You can see uncaught type error. Pebbles is not a function, right? Because it doesn't even know parent exists because we didn't set it up as a prototype. So this is the before object.create, after object.create. All right. So now what we've done is we've rehashed prototype. We hopefully understand it better. It's a holding place for methods for our objects that are being created. We can extend that out by using object.create, which sets up the dunder proto to inherit. And the last thing that I think was confusing was the extension of the this keyword with parent.call. This one I think makes a little bit more sense than object.create. That was a big leap. But this one's not such a big leap because you can see age, name, location, and phrase are all repeated, right? Wilma and Fred have the same thing. So in order to gain those attributes, we can say parent.call. So parent, remember, is the constructor. .call assigns specifically the this keyword that came from child. So remember, if we said console.log this on child, we would bring in all the attributes that we passed. So remember when I said console log this and console log child attributes and I had old and new? That's exactly what's going on here. We're passing in the this keyword, we're passing in those attributes so we can get new versions of Pebbles. And then because this.new toy is new to the whole situation, it can stay inside of child, but it's fine when it gets created. This only belongs to child. Parent does not have access to toy. And this lies the problem with inheritance patterns in any programming language, right? We talked about this end of day. Some of you were gone, but this is the problem where you just wanted the banana, got the whole gorilla and the jungle behind it, because let's say that Pebbles didn't actually need location, but only needed speak. Well, it doesn't matter. You still get location, right? Because it's part of its nature. There's nothing you can do about it. And that feels bad when you're trying to build an app with 8,000 lines of code. And you're like, oh, I just need this one method. I don't need all 15 methods, and I don't need all this stuff. And it's like, too bad. You're using inheritance patterns. You're going to inherit everything. And so that's where compositional programming started to make a big climb recently with functional programming, where that means that basically functions do one thing really well, and they don't inherit from each other. They just do one thing really well. That's out of scope today. I don't want to go further than that. I want to focus on inheritance and just focus on it. Okay. All of these things being understood, we now can add our own custom prototype play for child. So can Fred use play? No. Can Wilma use play? No. Can Pebbles use play? Yes. By the way, if we created a grandchild, so if Bam Bam Jr. came along, could Bam Bam Jr. use play as an inherited child? Yes or no? What do you think? Yes, that's exactly right. Could Bam Bam Jr. also use speak and location? Yes. So this is the advantage of inheritance patterns. So yes, there's two sides to every coin. Okay, I feel like we're in a good spot. Let me stop for questions here, and then we'll go through the conversion to classes. What created the initial constructor that constructs all the other constructors? So remember, the initial constructor, in this case, is the new keyword. So the new keyword is what's giving us the construction of a new object. So if we go look at MDN new, The new operator lets developers create an instance of a user-defined object type or one of a built-in object types that has a constructor function. The new keyword does the following things. Number one, creates a blank, plain JavaScript object. So there's your answer. Number two, links, sets the constructor of this object to another object. Number three, passes the newly created object from step one as the this context. Number four, returns this if the function doesn't return its own object. So the new keyword's doing a lot of stuff, but ultimately it's creating new objects and assigning the this keyword, right? As we just read. Where can I find the code for each array method? Are you talking about the constructor function code? So you're thinking about, I want to see the underbelly of reduce, for example. Well, we can create our own versions of these things using vanilla JavaScript. Then we could encapsulate them inside of methods if we wanted. So like you could recreate for each using a native for loop and house it inside of a method called for each. And that's the same thing they're doing. Everything transpiles down. For example, if I took, let's take for each and just pop this over to Babel, see what Babel says. So in this case, actually for each is a bad one to choose. We should do map because for each will work on older browsers. Map's one of the new ones. Let's go over to map. There we go. Okay. Let's see what comes out here. It looks like map is compatible as well. What the heck? In this case, I was expecting to see a native for loop here. So I wonder what kind of browser we're supporting here. But the bottom line is we could go back and recreate everything with simpler terms in JavaScript, like a for loop with if statements, for example, for a filter. Okay, great question. Man, I love that question. Yesterday's assignment, the child attribute, humanoid, are passed to the parent attributes, character stats, and game object. Can the child attributes be shared to the parent? Please explain. No. Child attributes cannot be shared to the parent because we just can't. It's first off, that would wreck the inheritance patterns of JavaScript. It would cause chaos in our code, and it's not allowed. So you just can't do it. Parents cannot inherit from children. That's a backwards. It's an anti-pattern. What are the best uses for the Dunder Proto? Okay, that's a great question, Preston. The answer is really just seeing where it came from. That's the only use I can think of. It used to be used where you would assign the Dunder Proto, but that is now frowned upon, and don't do that. So we use the Dunder Proto as a learning tool. It's only visible in browsers. Like you won't be able to see it. Like in Quokka, you won't be able to see the inheritance pattern there. Do we always need .call if we use object.create? So object.create gives us access to the methods, but it doesn't give us access to the properties. So yes, we need the combination of both of them. Great question. We need both. For one is for the constructor, right? And one is for the prototypes. Okay. It's time. It's time to convert this thing into class syntax and see that beautiful sugar that some developers hate. So let's talk about what I mean. So here we go. We're now going to convert this thing into a class and really see how this, I think seeing this is kind of like pre-processing. It's just like this beautiful revelation. So I'm going to say class parent. I'm going to open and close curly braces. I'm going to put a little comment here because it's just nice to know where you are. So notice the big difference already. We're using a new thing called class. So how is class different? Well, class. Class is not hoisted. So that means, whereas a function declaration like this is considered a function declaration, we could put our Fred stuff here and it would still at the top of the page and it would still work. But if we put our Fred stuff above a class that we referenced, it would cease to work. So classes are not hoisted, meaning you've got to make sure you put anything you use after class inside of there. Also, they use strict. So remember that use strict conversation we had? Every scope inside of class is utilizing use strict. That's pretty cool. So it prevents window binding, for example, and other more specific code pieces. It makes you write cleaner code with errors if you don't. Methods are special syntax. So in this case, you'll see really quickly when I write my methods what they look like. But methods are special syntax that are reserved for classes. And a constructor function is visible. So in this case, we're calling this a constructor function, but it doesn't make sense because you're just like, oh yeah, it's constructing an object. Well, guess what? We actually have something called constructor now. So inside of class, it's literally called constructor. And that makes a lot of sense, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste our newly constructed values up here. We're going to receive attributes just like we did before. So you can see this is equivalent to this. And you might be going, the abstraction added more code. And I'm going, yes, but everything under the constructor now is where we place our methods. And watch this abstraction. So where we had prototype before, we now gain way more simplicity because parent.prototype is implicit. It's automatically assumed. So we don't need that anymore. Because why? Because it's housed inside of here. It's nested inside. Do we need this function crap? No, because it's implied. It already knows it's a function. Wow. So we do need those if we want to pass parameters, of course. That is crazy looking syntax, like crazy clean. So in this case, that feels better mentally just to see that. So if we were to convert location, let's do it. Come in here. Shift tab. Get rid of parent prototype. Get rid of function. And away we go. Wow, that's pretty cool. So now we have a constructor function that's called constructor. We have methods that are housed, nested, literally inside the class, so they're not like floating out there anymore. And it's all built in. That's pretty slick. And it's going to prevent us from writing bad code because it's as if every one of these has a use strict on it. It's all built in. So we're not going to accidentally bind. So this is really beautiful, but some purists don't like it because people were coming over to JavaScript and they were only seeing this from other languages. So let's say you came over from Java or C or some other language like that, and you saw these classes being built. Well, guess what? You would think that JavaScript is class-based at this point, right? Because it looks like a class from other languages. But this is just syntactical sugar that's still using all of this stuff down here. It's still using prototype. It's still using object.create, if you will. We'll talk about that in a second. So if you don't understand those things, then you incorrectly assume that JavaScript is class-based, which it's not. Okay, what I want you to do for the next 5 minutes is convert the rest of this. Oh wait, I haven't talked about extends, never mind. I gotta talk about the child extension. Let's do it together. Sorry, I got all excited about how easy this was looking. So let me go ahead and delete this stuff. We don't need it anymore. And now we've got function child. So let's look at how child works. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste my structure here since we already spent all that time building it. We'll replace parent with child. Okay, 1 second here. Got someone that's just banging on my door. Let's take a 5-minute break here. All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that break. I know I certainly did. Yelling at the neighborhood kids. I'm just kidding. No yelling occurred, but rage like parent talking. Why did you keep ringing that doorbell? I heard you talking. If I didn't come to the door, why would you keep ringing the doorbell? Oh, man. Kids. Okay. I'm still just a big kid, so it doesn't matter. In this case, class, parent, constructor, methods. Let's get back into extending out our child so it can inherit properly. So in this case, constructor attributes, we don't bring these in because we've already got them, right? So I copied and pasted. I'll just delete. So one thing that is new is toy, right? So toy is something that's new, but in this case, do we say parent.call? Well, no, that's been replaced with something else. Enter super. So in this case, super, if we go look at it, NBN super, you will see the super keyword is used to access and call functions on an object's parent. It also allows us to access all the arguments as well. So all the things that we need. So if we look at this thing, you can see it's used exactly how we're using it, where we're supering out. So here's the thing. Where does it know where super should be supering to? Like if I don't tell child, like what does super even mean here? There's no reference to parent here, right? I can't, like, what's supposed to go in here is my child attributes, right? So it looks like that. So how in the world is child supposed to know about parent? Yes, Zach said it, extends. So in this case, extends tells super where to go. Wait a second. If we're telling something where to inherit from, what is that doing under the hood? What is extends really doing? No, not call. Yes, Amanda. Child.prototype, object.create, parent prototype. It's linking the prototype. It's getting the Dunder proto linked up. That's exactly what it's doing. So extends points child to the right spot. Super then accesses the properties and methods of where it was extended. That's pretty cool. And this pattern repeats itself over and over. So now if we wanted to, so we don't have speak and location anymore, right? Because we copied and pasted. We have play. So if we bring play up here, shift, don't need child prototype anymore, right? Play, and we don't need function anymore. We just go right into it. That's awesome. And of course, let's make sure our comments are clean. There we go. So now child doesn't look so scary anymore compared to like the monstrosity that it looked like before because of this stuff that we were just trying to grapple with, right? So now if I delete this, look how clean. That looks pretty. Very easy to consume, very easy to write. So if I hit clear, save, and run, it works. I want to be clear that the code that we wrote before works the same way. We just cleaned it up with syntactical sugar. So we made class, we introduced classes. We're still using the same inheritance patterns. We're still using Dunder proto. We're still binding the this keyword. It's just now it's in a specific pattern that repeats over and over. So now we've got our two classes. So in this case, const Fred and Wilma and Pebbles, none of that changed. Like those stay the same. What's new is our fancy new syntax here. Okay, what I want you to do for the next 5 minutes is I want you to make a grandchild class. that extends from child. So I'll put some comment here. Say, create a grandchild. I'll do it the proper way. Grandchild class that extends from child. Create an object named Bam Bam Junior. I'll give you 7 minutes. How about that? So Bam Bam Junior will have all of these attributes, and then you can come up with something new. So I want you to extend Bam Bam Junior so that Bam Bam Junior can play with a toy, we can know the location, and Bam Bam Junior can speak. Okay? I'll give you 7 minutes to do that. So I'm going to hit save here, give you this link. 7-minute timer will start. I want you to extend Bam Bam Junior and add some methods. Have fun with it if you get the base requirements done. Okay, 7 minutes. Ready, extend. What the? 7-minute timer. There we go. 7 minutes. All right. So hopefully that 7 minutes was enough to get it done and then go play around and see what you can come up with. So let me go back to, let me make a thread here. I want to see what you did. So thread for extended, let's see, for grandchild. So there's the thread. And here is the thread. Nice. Okay. Jeremy, let's see what you got. Jeremy, good. Okay. So class, grandchild, extends child, good. Perfect. Grandchild attributes, super grandchild. Yes, perfect. This pastime, grandchild, pastime. Okay, let's see what you do with pastime. Smashing things. Perfect. Pastime has, yep, okay, good. So Bam Bam Junior, new name. Bam Bam Junior play and Pebbles play. Let's see if it all works. Excellent. Very good. And then if we wanted to see a method in here, of course, we could then jump down here and do some method, right? Okay, good job. Very well done. All right, Amanda. Come down to grandchild. Extends child, perfect. Grandchild attributes, yep. This new toy, grandchild toy. So toy versus new toy, I like that. Bam Bam Junior has a toy. Okay, so this is interesting. Age, name, location, phrase. And so if we come in here and we have a new toy, you're assigning the value of the toy. So this could be a little confusing, right? Because if Pebbles has a toy and Bam Bam has a toy, we've got to figure that out. So there probably needs to be a new toy here if we were going to do something like that. But I see what you're doing. Uterus. So Bam Bam Junior play. So if we hit run here, my requirements were just to see that, so you nailed it. But I want you to be aware that this could be confusing for the next developer by having matching attributes and then not updating them here. So careful of that, but I think that's cool. All right, Mackenzie. Let's see. Opened up as, oh, as a Zoom. No. So I think I was looking for a CodePen there, Mackenzie. Sorry. Okay, in this case, Christopher. Come in here, and we got grandchild, extends child, perfect. Oh, we've got some methods in here. Cries, this cry, yep, there we go. Perfect, using the new name from the very beginning. Lost toy and the new toy. Okay, let's go see Bam Bam Junior. So same thing. I want to see the new toy here. We don't want to have matching toys with new attributes. So same thing I told Amanda, but this looks great. Hit run. Looking good. All right. I'm really impressed. Let's see. One more. I'm just going to scroll. Leslie. Come down here to grandchild. Extends child perfectly. Yep. Super. Yep. This dot food. Nice. Something new here. Okay. Eats this name. Eats food. Yes. Perfect. Okay. Well done. I really like this. Mashed lizard even. Hit run. Excellent. Very good. I noticed nobody updated Pebble's age, though, or Wilma or Fred. So I guess they're twins, huh? But in this case, one's a child, one's a grandchild. So funny little thing there. Good job, everybody. Very well done. You're totally getting it. I'm very impressed, seriously. Considering yesterday's woeful introduction to prototypes, seeing how well all of you are doing is just great. Okay, so let's go look at the objectives. Explain the 4 principles. Oh, wait, that's yesterday. Let's go look at today's objectives. So describe and demonstrate how class syntax works. So you should be able to do that. We're going to walk over it one more time. Convert a pseudo-classically instantiated program into class syntax. That's our fancy way of saying convert what we did yesterday into classes. So just to give you a preview of the project, you will be going to the prototype refactor. So you're going to take your code that you did yesterday that you cried over, and you're going to have tears of joy today as you convert it into class syntax. By the way, you should have got solution from your PM end of day. If you did not, chat your PM and say, can I get that solution? Because I know that some of you might not have gotten through the prototype refactor, as it was just a lot to handle. For those of you that are stressing about the sprint challenge right now, the object.create and parent.call are not part of, there's no extension inside of the sprint challenge, because we're going to be using those with extends and super as a stretch inside of classes. So just don't be freaked out. It's a concept I need you to understand. Like, we shook our brains so we understand prototypes, and that everything in JavaScript is derived from an object that we create. That was the whole point. As far as the syntax goes, I just want you to focus on converting to class syntax for now, as it's used later on in many other frameworks. Angular, Vue, React, Ember, they all have semblances of this kind of syntax. So this is preparing you for all the frameworks moving forward. That's why we call it fundamentals, right? So in this case, you're going to be setting up your project with Git like normal, with branching and all the good stuff you've been used to. You've already known how to do all those things with our classes, so we're going to do a refactor. This should be pretty quick. Like, this should take you like 10, 15 minutes if you have the solution, right? So now, for those of you that pushed as far as you could with stretch, yeah, it's going to take longer, but I still think it's worth it. But maybe, if you stretched like crazy yesterday and you have thousands of lines of prototype code, this will still be pretty quick for you. It should be just a conversion into classes. Then we've got a new challenge for you, which is called Lambda classes. So we need a roster of Lambda School personnel, build it. So we've basically moved the instructions out here to the README for this assignment. We've been experimenting for a couple cohorts now with the inline instructions versus the README external instructions. So I'm always interested to hear what you feel about these things. But so in this case, if you go to the assignment, it's going to be a blank file. And it's going to say, go read the README file. So, well, it doesn't say that, but that's the expectation. Okay? So make sure you read the README file, because this is real life. This is what everybody does as a developer. They read the README files, they experiment, they break things, and ultimately solve problems. Okay, so coming back to the kind of the rehashing of everything we've done. We talked about classes. We talked about how they're not hoisted. They use strict. Methods are a special syntax. Notice there's no function word used at all. There's no anonymous function used. It's just specific method syntax. A constructor function is visible, meaning we can actually see it now. Those are some telltale attributes. Then as we get into extends links up the dunder proto so that super knows where to go. Super allows the use of attributes and methods from the extended class. So super and extends combined do what parent.call and object.create did. But if you want to be explicit about it, dunder proto is created when extends happens. Super does kind of both with the this keyword binding and extends actually kind of does both of that too. So it's kind of like they're melded together, but super is more focused on grabbing methods, as we saw here, right? So super keyword is used to access and call functions on an object's parent. So that is over here. That is then made clearly. So let me create a grandchild class with you, since some of you might have struggled with it. So I'm going to come in here and just copy and paste, because I already got my structure. I'll say grandchild, and I think I had a capital C in there, but grandchild shouldn't. So in this case, class grandchild extends, and I could extend parent, but I want to extend child because I want to gain access to the toy in the play method, right? So again, another case against inheritance, because now let's say I only wanted this, but now I'm going to get all this stuff too. So I'm going to bring in new grand, we'll just say gchild attributes. And by the way, this is a new scope of code. I could just say attributes over and over again, but it's nice to have the differentiation so you can see them. So again, creates a grandchild class that extends from child. Super allows us to use attributes and methods from the extended class, and in this case, classes, because we're going to grab multiple by nature of inheritance. So grandchild's only pointing, oops, what am I doing? Okay, I got lost a little sick there. So up here is our child, down here's our grandchild. So this is extending parent, this is extending child. We're getting everything, right? Everything inherited down. So now this dot, I liked food, that was easy, good thinking there. So with food, we'll come back down here and we'll make Bam Bam Junior. Or Pebbles Jr., whatever, it doesn't matter. We'll do Pebbles Jr. So in this case, Pebbles Jr. comes in. Bedrock, phrase, say, I like fruity stuff. And then our toy could be something different because Pebbles Jr. is different. So maybe she's got a rock, a rock car. And then in this case, food, right? In this case, we'll do, oh man, trying to be creative on the fly like this is hard for me. We'll just do like, I'm thinking about funny stuff with like rock oatmeal or something stupid. Fruity Pebbles is great. Okay, so in this case, we've got our grandchild, extending child, and so we've got to make sure that this extends grandchild, right? Like we've just got to line everything up. So in this case, it's a new grandchild, it's Pebbles Jr. Okay. So now Pebbles is older, we'll say 30 something. We'll bump Fred and Wilma up 20 years as well, or 30 or whatever, 60. So we've got Grandma and Grandpa, we've got Pebbles, and now we've got Pebbles Jr. Time flies when you're having fun with functions. So in this case, grandchild extends child. We now have our grandchild attributes, super grandchild attributes. So we're grabbing food, which now exists. We're also getting toy. We're also getting age, name, location, and phrase. So inheritance, wow, inheriting a lot of stuff. And then our method here will be eat. This dot new name eats. This dot food. Okay. So I'm gonna hit save, clear, and run. Make sure there's no errors. Do I have anything running? I do have an error. So let's go look at our code. Pebbles Jr., new grandchild. Make sure that matches 1-to-1. Okay. Extends child, looks good. Constructor, looks good. Super, looks good. Okay. Console log. Well, Pebbles.play should work, right? If everything works. Child attributes, yep. Play, this name. I changed the name. So Pebbles is here. Pebbles Jr. is here. This .food gchild attributes. Aha, thank you. Good eye. Very good eye. Okay. Save and run. Hopefully this should be error-free. There we go. And then, so now that we know Pebbles works, let's go get Pebbles Junior in here. Let's make sure Pebbles Junior has, yeah, a different toy. Save and run. There it is. Pebbles Junior plays with Rock Car. Perfect. And then we can go over to Pebbles Junior and say eat. Save and run. Pebbles Junior eats Fruity Pebbles. There we go. So now that we've got all this stuff working, you can just repeat this pattern over and over if needs be. But this is pretty far down the inheritance chain, by the way. And this is a lot of inheritance going on here. So be warned. This is pretty much as far as you'd want to go if you can help it. You'd want to put more methods and house them in things that are more like-minded. But our example, we could do a great-grandchild with the same pattern, same syntax, everything. So nothing changes. It just gets deeper. So in this case, if I tried to get Fred to eat, there's a lot of problems now. Hopefully they're going through your head. You're like, well, first off, Fred doesn't even have food to eat, right? Because there's no food over here. Secondly, Fred doesn't even have methods to eat because they're way further down, right? So those are two things that should go through your head before I even hit play, or hit run, I mean. So save and run. You can see everything else works except for the last line. If we go to the console, we can see Fred.eat is not a function. So this proves that we can't go back up the chain. All right. You, my friends, are now prepared. Let me go to the questions thread. Even though one doesn't use the prototype keyword when assigning methods to classes, those methods are in fact still stored on the object prototype, correct? Absolutely. Very well said. And this shows that you understood what I talked about because they're not classes. Good job, anonymous friend. Classes are not hoisted. How about prototypes? Prototypes, remember, are saved for later in the object that was created. So classes and prototypes are apples and oranges. Classes are building objects. Prototypes are holding methods. Why not abstract the constructor syntax away from within the class? For example, like in Python. Because JavaScript just got this new syntax, like this is newer to the language, and they took a lot of hints from other languages. And Python, I think, is more unique than, for example, Java and C and C#. They're all from the same base, but as far as syntactical sugar goes, Python is its own special character. Will the parameters stored in the super function always match the parameters stored in the constructor within the child class? As long as the extends is pointing to the right one, yes. So it all depends on extends, right? Because that's where the Dunder proto is going. So for the assignment, we have to make an instructor constructor. Yes, that's a mouthful. Any sources for extra practice with array methods and prep for the sprint challenge? I would go back to the assignment. Remember how I had you make 3 problems? I mean, I would go back through there and maybe add two or three more problems. I wouldn't stress. Like if you've done the assignments up until this point, you're going to be totally prepared. So here's the thing. It's open note, right? So it's not like you versus the challenge and you're just sweating. Pull up all your CodePens, have them ready, or your local GitHub files or whatever it is that you feel most comfortable with. Have VS Code open, and you can totally copy and paste a map over, just put in the right things. So don't get stuck on that. Like, developers are not memorizing syntactical sugar. There's too much to memorize. It's usually the stuff that you're using over and over. So if I've been using map a lot, yeah, I've got it memorized. But if I haven't used it for a while, you better believe I'm going to MDN like every other schmuck. So understand that. Like, I'm not just sitting here like, oh, yes, map for each. Yes, it's all in my head. I'm just thinking about it. Heck no. I know where to go, though. I know how to find it, and I know how to implement it. That's the key, right? And of course, again, if you're doing it a lot, it does become rote. But if you're not, don't feel bad about Googling. I Google every freaking day. So in super, you put the arg you have in your child constructor, not the arg and the parent constructor. Can you explain this, please? Yeah, sure. So if we come over here, the question was asked, why are you putting grandchild attributes in here as we want to go up? Let's just look at child to parent. So in this case, what we're doing is child attributes, remember, is coming from here, right? So age, name, location, phrase, toy. These four are what I'm passing in addition to my toy rock doll, right? And so in this case, I'm passing in the grandchild attributes. But I'm only making this one available to my method eat, right? So food is only available here. I couldn't use food up here. So it's an inheritance pattern. That's why we do that. So it's to keep that stuff separated, inheritance-wise. Can a child class inherit from two parent classes? No. You can only extend from one. Can you spread props in the constructor? Something like constructor props, and then this assign this dot this props. So you could, you totally could, but we're not. There's no need for it for us to spread those in because, I mean, you could go through there and then just assign this dot props with the spread. Probably should work. We could try that out. It'd be fun. I miss HTML and CSS. Can we go back? You're going to be using it next week. So if you survive, which you will, this is our only like 100% no HTML week that you'll have. Everything after this is going to be a combination of all of them. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that's next week. So don't be sad. Hold on tight. Today's assignment has a few things that are ambiguously named. Working with an array seems confusing, and using other object names. Work through it line by line, Jeremy, and then tell me. Like, I am interested in that feedback. So if go through it line by line, don't try to like take it all at once. Just one line by line, go through it, do the thing, and by the time you're done, if it doesn't work, let your PM know. Like, I want to know. That's good feedback. Okay. So the spread operator, let's go look at that. I'm intrigued. So in this case, someone was saying, can we spread this out by the order? The only thing is like the order that comes in, well, let's try it. So in this case, we did that. So we'll hit save and run. So object plays with rock doll, object plays with car. So in this case, it doesn't know the name. It wasn't spread out individually into each piece there. So that's interesting. So in this case, it does need the dot syntax, it looks like, to show the actual name. Interesting. Oops, what did I do wrong here? Rest and spread are the same syntax, just so you know. So we've got to bring our, it looks like we've got to bring our dot syntax in there to access each one of these. So yeah, interesting. Have you got it to work, Moses? Have you looked at that? Let's go look at that. Rest. It's not the same behavior, is it? Rest parameters allows you to us to represent an indefinite, I can't even say that, number of arguments as an array. Okay, so that's the thing, is it's looking for an array, right? So in this case, it's trying to go through here, and that's apples and oranges, arrays to object literals. I think I just got caught up in the question there, didn't realize. So nope, we're going to have an array, and these are object literal pieces. But still fun to think about. Let's see, any other questions? I'm struggling with vocabulary. If I can point and grunt at the right code, will that be enough? Do I need to know that pseudo-classically flagellously let's see. Pseudo-classical prototypal inheritance, I did not know about it until I got to Lambda school. So if that makes you feel good, it should. I never used that term in my life. But you better know what an argument is versus a parameter. You better know what a function expression is versus an arrow function. Like, those things are necessary. Oh, Mackenzie has a nice link here. A glossary of terms from Code Academy, which I very much like. Looks like it's got tons of good stuff in here. This will come in time, by the way. Like, it took me years to get comfortable. I speak a crazy language. I speak Hmong, which is a southern China, Laotian mountain speaking language. It's crazy that I speak Hmong. So, prove it. You can't speak Hmong. You don't know if I'm saying anything. So I have a lot of like experience with ridiculous language problems. And JavaScript is like the same thing as Hmong. Like, there's so many things that are so hard to get in time. Yes, the people from Gran Torino, that's exactly right. Okay, I'll speak some Hmong to you. Ba, 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 ba. It's a tonal language. So that means Paul watches grandma throw the ball back and forth. Ba, 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 ba. That's the first thing they taught us, just to scare us. Really, it sounds like Nyajong, Gapo Nyajong, Gulumbe Hoa Chengseng. So if you were Hmong, you would understand that I said, hello, how are you doing? My name is Chengseng. So there you go. But I bring it up to say languages have a bunch of terminologies, and it's super crazy. So like if we were to go to Google Translate and we were to type in Hmong here. So Nyajong means hello. So getting this took a long time, like a really long time. So these are the kind of things that just, in JavaScript, you're having the same problems I had when I was learning Hmong. It's just like, feels overwhelming. Like, how could you possibly do this? And then pretty soon you start to speak Hmong. And so the same thing will happen. Why did I learn Hmong? I served a mission in Wisconsin. So you've probably heard of missions before, but 2-year service mission. And I spoke Hmong in Wisconsin. Pretty crazy. So that's why I learned Hmong. So in this case, Nyajong means hello. There's a lot of Hmong words on license plates. Like, su, that means only. I see that everywhere. But I just want to tell you that, like, I have a lot of empathy for you as a new learner of a new language. So understand that. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. I understand it's frustrating. But please be patient with yourself. Please, please, because one day you will start speaking JavaScript. And you're going to be like, how did I get here? And it's going to be like, oh, yeah, I cried a lot. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, my fingers hurt, like from hitting that keyboard. You will never learn a language by reading about it. You will never learn a language by studying it. You will only learn a language by speaking it, and in our case, writing it. Like, that's why you're here. You are here to write code. That's why we have projects for you every day. That's why you have to do something every day, because after doing that for months, you will start to become fluent. That's how things work with technical skills. You've got to do the thing or you'll never learn it. I used to read JavaScript books and I would be like, oh man, I totally understand it. And then I'd put the book down. And from the moment I put the book down to get my fingers on the keyboard, I forgot it. And I'd be like, what the freak? This isn't right. And I'm sure you've experienced that even this week, or even the last 3 weeks, or even in the pre-course, or even today. I just want you to understand that feeling, unfortunately, it never goes away. But the cool thing is you build up a resistance to the pain and you start to get it. So I'm serious. The emotions, the pain, the feelings of discouragement, they're part of learning, unfortunately. But man, once you come out on top, boom, you get that job offer. So good. I just worked with a student. They just got a job offer today. I've been working with them in our mentoring program. It was so cool to see this student go from kind of confident. Like I remember them as a student coming in, and they weren't like the student that was like answering every question or anything. They were really quiet. And then they just kept going, never gave up. And all of a sudden they got a job offer today. Like that work was not all of a sudden. It was months. So keep that in your mind as you're doing this stuff, line by line. Find the stuff that kicks your butt and stick to that line. Okay? That's right, Corey. Always remember you crying, because when you get that job offer and you got those good tears, that's the good stuff. Okay, well, I'll use the last couple minutes here to answer any questions if you're feeling good. Oh, Gucci Jiao Dao Si Shi, Google Zaitrao Kana. Nice, Emmett. I was like, what the heck? Emmett knows Hmong, but I guess Google Translate works pretty good. Oh, man. By the way, Google Translate did not exist when I was learning Hmong. I learned it from freaking crappy books. Oh. Okay, let me go back here. So parameters hold the arguments. That's a good way of thinking about it. Parameters, I would say, receive arguments. Okay, they receive arguments, but I like that. Do we get a guest appearance next Friday for the banjo, please? I don't know. We'll let Dan do whatever he's got. We'll still be doing banjo tomorrow. We'll have our last banjo day. So it's not cheating to copy and paste. Will labs help us ingrain this? It is not cheating to copy and paste. No. What is cheating is not knowing what the crap you copied and pasted does. So if you don't know the line of code, if you don't know what you just did, that's where I'm like scared for you. And that's why I'm like, you can copy and paste syntax till you're blue in the face, but just make sure you know why it works. Otherwise, you become a Stack Overflow developer. I cannot seem to get this to work. What am I doing wrong? Okay, let's go take a look. What instrument does Dan play? I don't know. I don't know if Dan, I think he's on the airplane, so I don't know if he can answer that. I know he was listening before. Okay, so there was some code given here, and it said, what am I doing wrong? So in this case, first off, I've got to look at the errors. That's where I always start. So always go to console. So there's a Fred.buggy is not a function. So that's where I'm going to look first. So I'm going to go over here. And by the way, when I'm coding, when I'm not teaching you and I'm like on my own, I think I told this to you before, but if I didn't, I go to the dock side and I undock this into a separate window, and I have it like right next to my window. I highly, highly recommend, if possible, to get a second monitor. If you have any financial means at all, to just get like a $50 or $60 monitor, something cheaper, it's going to change your life. It's going to make you a better programmer. I'm not kidding. If possible. Okay, so if we come over here, let's go see what Buggy is doing. So we've got Fred, Buggy, Super Buggy. Okay, so here's the thing. Aha, here's Buggy. So Captain Anonymous, in this case, Buggy cannot work. Why? What is everybody? You tell me, everybody. What's going on here? Why can't Buggy work? Oh, wait a second. Grandchild is here. Okay, never mind. Fred was turned into a grandchild. I was looking at that for a second. Let me look at this again. Grandchild attributes, this dot buggy, grandchild attributes, buggy, yep. Buggy, yep, return this dot new name rides in this dot buggy. Okay, and there's buggy. There's only one instance of Fred. Fred.buggy is being invoked properly. Yes, it is. Okay. We come up here to parent, has age, name, location. Looking good. Okay, we got speak, return, location. Those are fine. They're not being used. So class child extends parent. Super child attributes. That looks good to me. This dot new toy looks good. Okay, play looks good. So now we're coming back to grandchild. We've got a capital G, capital C. Yep. Extends child, yes. Grandchild attributes, yes. Okay, let's make sure they're spelled the same. Yep. And that's the same. Okay, so this dot buggy, assign the value of grandchild attributes dot buggy. That looks good. Let's see. I think it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. Buggy. Let's see here. Yep, that's spelled the same. Okay, we have our buggy method returning, and then we've got this dot new name, which should be returning rides in this dot buggy. So in this case, is there any syntactical failures here? We don't need a comma on the last item. It's fine. Like that doesn't need to happen, for example. Let's see. Steve says, is there an issue with using buggy as both the function and a key? Oh, that's probably it. So let's do buggy ride as the method. And then we'll come down here and we'll say buggy ride, run. Aha. So in this case, good job, Steve, seeing that. So this dot buggy and buggy were conflicting with each other. That's a good problem. That was a fun one. Because we've got an error, but it's like, oh man, everything else is making sense. Good. That's fun. That's fun to go through that stuff. Okay. I appreciate your patience with me and my ridiculous questions. Well, Mr. or person anonymous, I appreciate your questions. Okay, that's it. I will see you tomorrow for our sprint Q&A review and any questions you might have on JavaScript fundamentals. And this is my last time teaching you. Potentially my last time teaching students. That's pretty crazy as I'm moving into a new role. So thank you. It's been great. I know that we've had some tough times together, but we survived. At least I think we did. We're all here. We're all happy. All right. Good luck in your assignment. I will see you tomorrow for Sprint Challenge. Don't stress about your Sprint Challenge. Focus on the class syntax today. Go review array methods, and you'll be good. Thanks, everybody. See you.